Alright, now this is lesson 1. This is part 2. Part 1 was where I showed you how to do interval and set builder notation, and now we're going to go on to compound inequalities. Our objective in this video is to write, solve, and graph and compound inequalities. So 2 inequalities joined by the word and. Once again, this is your vocabulary. Write everything down. If you have any questions about it, ask me tomorrow. So pause the video, restart when you're ready. Alright, so we sort of have a mission when we're solving a compound inequality that contains the word and. All a compound inequality is 2 separate inequalities joined by the word and. And to solve one, you have to find all the values of the variables that make both inequalities true. And here is an example of an and compound inequality. If you need some time, pause the video and write this information down. Alright, here's my first example. And my directions tell me to solve, graph, and write it in set builder and interval notation. Alright, first of all, both of these inequalities are solved because I have the variable isolated or alone on one side of the inequality. But this one right here, this inequality is not written in my blueprint or my format I want. I always want my variable to the left, followed by my inequality, and then my number to the right. But that's an easy fix. I can flip those two, my x and my 3, as long as I flip the direction of my inequality. What this is saying, 3 is greater than x, is the same thing as x is smaller than or less than 3. Alright, now here is my compound inequality. It's a compound because it's 2 inequalities joined by the word and. Easiest way to go about doing this, or to get your graph, is first of all think of the 2 graphs separately. So I'm going to label a number line here, and I'm going to indicate my 3 and my -2 because those are my 2 solutions there. And I'm just going to graph this one right here first. So here's my first graph. Open circle at 3 and shaded to the left. Now I'm going to do same number line. And what I have here is, I'll do it in red also, closed circle at -2 and shaded to the right. Alright, here's the trick to compound inequalities that are joined by the word and. The only thing that could be shaded on your final number line, and this is my final number line here, my -2 and my 3, is things that are shaded on both. So if you'll look right here, to the left of -2. I have it shaded on the first one, but not the second one, so I can't shade it on my final answer. And if I look at what's going on at -2, I have shading, and I have a closed circle that's shading, so I have a closed circle with shading there. And then, let's see, to the right of 3, no shading, shading. It's not shaded on both, so it can't be shaded there. And then finally, look at what's going on at 3. Open circle, no shading, but shading here. So I can have an open circle there. I can't shade it because it's not shaded on the first number line. And finally, if you look in here in between 2 and -3, shaded, shaded, so it's shaded on my answer. So this is what my final graph looks like. And my interval notation is just start point, comma, stop point. So shading starts at -2, comma, stops at 3. The only time I use a bracket is when I have a closed dot. So I'm going to have a bracket around 2 and parentheses around 3. And finally, my set builder notation. All I have to do is my braces, all real numbers, x, such that, and then I just rewrite my answer. And that's your basic compound inequality. Alright, now we've got a compound inequality, and remember once again, a compound inequality is just 2 inequalities joined by a compound word. And in this video, our compound word is the word and. So all you do to solve a compound inequality is first you work with the first inequality and you solve it. And then second, you work with the second inequality and solve it. So I'd like you to pause the video and see if you remember how to solve each inequality. Okay, well here's my two solutions to both inequalities. All I did was solve the first one, solve the second one, stick the word "and" between them. Alright, now that we have our solutions, let's see if we can graph it. Why don't you pause the video now and take a stab at graphing it yourself. So pause now. Alright, here's what my two individual inequalities look like. Do yours look like this? If not, give it a shot again, and if you still can't get it, we'll talk about it tomorrow. Now see if you can combine those and put the compound inequality on the graph over here. So this is what my inequality looks like, my final graph, when I combine f of is less than or equal to 5 and f is greater than negative 11. So now you've had some practice with set builder and interval notation, so let's see if you can use the graph and come up with those. So pause the video and do this now. Alright, here's what your interval and set builder notation should look like. Alright, are you ready for the next example? Because here we go. Alright, this example may mess with you a little bit. This is actually an and compound inequality. Whenever you see three chunks, three pieces together like it is here, and your inequalities are both pointing to the left, this is a compound inequality. So there's two ways I'm going to show you that you can set this up, and you can solve it either way. The first way is to break it apart. Take that piece in the middle, this x plus 1, and you're going to write it first 2 times. First time, include what comes before it, and the second time, include what comes after it. And then what you're going to do is you're going to write the word "and" in between them. Alright, so you can solve it like that, or here, there's another way we can do this, and it's you work on all three pieces at the same time. To get this x by itself here in the middle, I would have to get rid of this addition of 1. So I do that by subtracting 1, and if I do it in one section, I have to do it in all three sections. And a lot of people are going to remember to do it in the first section. They're going to forget this last one over here to the right. So if you do it in one piece, you do it in all three. And then when you do this, you get 5 minus 1 is 4, 13 minus 1 is 12. So x is in between 4 and 12. And that's the same thing you're going to get if you graph it up here. You're going to get x is greater than or equal to 4 and x is less than 12. Personally, I think it's a whole lot easier to graph when it's written that way, because what that means is all your values of x are between 4 and 12. You have the line underneath, so 4 is included, close dot, no line underneath over here. So 12 is not included. And since x is in between those values, you shade in between those values. Alright, so I've given you the graph. Let's see if you can come up with the interval and set builder notation. So pause the video and give it a shot. Alright, if you'll notice on my interval notation here that I have put two different answers here. These are both the same thing. They mean exactly the same. You are more likely, though, on ACT and exit exam to see it written this way, but they both are the same answer. Alright, on to the next one. Alright, here's a problem for you to try. I want you to solve both of these, but I'm going to make one minor change here. I'm going to take this 18 and I want you to change it to a negative 18. Alright, so we're making this negative 3x is greater than negative 18. So solve both of these inequalities. Remember they have the word and in between them, and once you get them solved, graph it, write the interval notation and the set builder notation. And when you're done, have the problem finished, restart the video. So pause it now. Alright, here's the graph and the interval notation, the set builder notation, and the solution. So check your work with mine. If you have any problems, make sure you ask me about it tomorrow. Alright, here's another one for you to try. Remember, it's got 3 pieces. It's broken up in 3 chunks. You can separate it out into a compound inequality like I did on the second example, or you can work on all 3 pieces at a time. It's completely up to you. So, get to work, pause the video. When you're done, restart. Alright, if you'll notice on this problem, I solved it both ways. I broke it apart into 2 pieces and solved each inequality. And I also did all 3 parts at the same time. Personally, I prefer this way up here because it's less work. But if you need to break it apart into 2 pieces and see it better that way, do that. Now you should make sure, pause the video again, and you try the graph, the interval notation, and the set builder notation, then restart. So pause now. Alright, here's the rest of it to check your work. And here, can you do this? See if you can write a compound inequality that represents the following statement. 7 is less than t, which is less than 12. So see what you come up with, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. See you then.